In this episode, I will talk about ActiveJob, which is another feature that's coming with Rails 4.2. In the previous video, I talked about Web Console, so if you haven't seen that one, go check it out. So ActiveJob, what is ActiveJob? ActiveJob is a unified interface that provides access to the different queuing mechanisms that Ruby offers. So what do I mean by that? Sometimes in your Rails application, which is a web application, you want to, as part of the request, you want to execute some sort of some kind of calculation, whether it's sending an email or compressing and processing a video, something that you know it's going to take a long time. So you don't want to hold up that request. You want to respond and then defer that intensive action to the background. So then the background process usually would pick that job off the queue and process it in the background. And then once it's done, it's going to move on to another job. So Rails 4.2 is not reinventing the wheel because there are plenty of options that you can choose from, like delayed job and rescue and different kinds of ways to accomplish this. It's just basically providing a layer of abstraction above all these different technologies so you can swap them without really worrying which one you're going to use. Kind of like Active Record, right? You can use Postgres, Oracle, SQLite, MySQL, whatever database you want to use. Your Active Record code is going to look pretty much the same, right? I mean, unless you're running find by SQL and then providing database specific SQL. But if you're using where and limit, it's basically going to work exactly the same way. The interface is going to look exactly the same, but the code that gets run will depend on the database. But you don't have to worry about that, right? It's very nice that you can just run the same kind of code against different databases. Well, that is exactly what ActiveJob is doing too. It's just instead of the databases, this is for the queuing technologies. So it's very easy to get started, by the way. All you have to do is just, well, you don't have to do this, but I did it because I think it's a good convention. Under app, I created a directory called jobs, inside of which I'm planning on putting all the jobs that I have. And then one of the jobs is called my job, basically the only job. It's a very simple job. It's only going to print out the object that I pass in. And I'll tell you exactly how this works. So the first thing you need to do, you need to create a class, name it whatever you want, as long as it inherits from ActiveJob : base. It's very similar to Active Record, like I said. So instead of Active Record : base, now you will be using ActiveJob : base. And the only method you need to define is this method called perform. Perform accepts one object. It doesn't have to be an Active Record model. It could be, but it doesn't have to be. It could be a plain Ruby object. And to make things really simple, dead simple, right? Inside of this method, I'm going to just print out that object. Very simple. And let's give it a shot. So I'm going to go into my app, run Rails console. And let's just make sure my job is picked up. Everything under app, by the way, everything under app should get picked up. You don't have to change the load paths or auto load paths. It should get picked up automatically. So let me change this to Rails console. So the way you use it, you just call my job dot perform later, and what I'm going to pass is just foo. And as you can see, it enqueued my job, performed it, printed out foo from inline. So what does this mean? So if you don't specify which adapter you're going to use, it's going to use basically no adapter. It's just going to run the code inline, which could be useful in the maybe testing environment, but not really useful in production, right? Because it would defeat the purpose of using a queuing technology in the first place. So the way you can see which queuing adapter you're using is by running ActiveJob base queue adapter, and it tells me right here it's inline. If you want to change this, you can change this in your config environment, whatever environment.rb, or you can create an initializer, which is what I did right here. So you don't have to, like I said, inline is the default value, so you don't have to specify it. But if you want to change it, you can say, for example, you can use delayed job, right? Now, Rails is not going to make sure that you have delayed job installed. You need to do that on your own, right? The way you do that, you go to the gem file and you need to install these two gems. Delayed job active record, if you're using active record like I am. Otherwise, if you're using, let's just say, Mongoid, you will do delayed job Mongoid. And another gem that it's not documented, but it will tell you that you need to install it as soon as you run that background process, called daemons. So these two gems you need to add to your gem file, run bundle, and you should be good to go. So the way we're going to do this, let me just make sure I added it to my settings. I did. I save that. I'm going to exit, run Rails console again. So now QAdapter should be delayed job adapter. All right, cool. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the exact same thing I did before. Remember? Exact code, but now I'm using a different adapter. Foo. You see what happened now? It added it to the delayed jobs table. Pretty cool, right? So delayed job is not going to just process this. You need to run a background process. That's why we say it's going to get processed in the background, right? But we can make sure that delayed job actually has one item in the queue. You see it ran select count from delayed jobs. So there is that one item in the queue. So how do we run this? We go to the app, and then we run bin delay job run. If I run start, it will run in the background, and then we won't see what it's printing out. So in production, you will probably want to run start, because why would you run it in the foreground in production? But here, for the demonstration purposes, run makes more sense, because we want to see this, right? We want to see the process printing out stuff. And this is what it did, right? So it just processed that queue, and right here, if I do job count, it's going to be 0. So it means it fetched that item from the queue, processed it. In this case, it means printing it out on screen. In your case, it's definitely going to mean something different. And it cleared the queue. So that's basically the way you use delay job, and also the way you use active job. Very simple, right? I hope you found this video useful. If there is anything you'd like me to cover in one of my future screencasts, let me know in the comments.